do. So welcome everybody to Why So Slow. What are the challenges that you face in 2021? We've had a huge shift in online teaching and it's affecting all sorts of efforts to even close the student attainment gap. What are the peers and the pitfalls and what are you all doing to support your colleagues and your students to do better? What I want to do today is outline some of the things that we've been exploring over the lockdown and really, I hope by the end of it, give you at least 3 things that you can take away to improve your online learning world, whether that's for you, your students, your colleagues. Who would have thought that, 369 days ago, we'd still be here in the middle of this craziness. And I don't know about you, but when I was looking at my calendar the other day and I picked something up and I was like, wow, I was chairing a panel on diversity in boards at the Institute of Directors. Gosh, that was in November. That was a few months ago now. Oh, it was 2019. And it just seems like a couple of months ago, but actually it's over a year ago. It's nearly 18 months ago. It's really quite alarming. And so much has happened. I personally have been really thrilled to see how people have moved online and the ease with which it seems to have happened. But I know from many friends and colleagues, the enormous effort that's gone into that. And quite often that seems to be a little bit unrewarded. But the other thing that I've appreciated, and so is Helen, my colleague, is the generosity of knowledge sharing that has been going on all across the board, whether it's from the engineering education research community or the international coaching community that we belong to. It's been absolutely phenomenal. And accessing on information and knowledge online is something that I hope that people will continue to do. I think it's got huge advantages. And if this is something that you are interested in doing, is accessing knowledge and people's expertise, then please put into the chat, yes. It'd be really great to know that going forward, this is something that we should be continuing to do in the Katalytik world. And I did mention we are recording this session, but if you want to submit some quick questions through to Helen, then we can pick those up at the end. And I've already got some questions that people have sent to me in advance. We're using the hashtag infusing inclusion for reporting on the discussions that we will be having in and around this area in the future. So welcome to Why So Slow. It's something I've been pondering for quite some time. Why in engineering are we still trying to address this topic of underrepresentation of women and minorities in engineering? There still seems to be as much, if not more work than ever to do. I called this webinar Why So Slow in honour of Virginia Valian, who wrote the book Why So Slow, focused around women in engineering science and engineering back in 1998, over 20 years ago. In fact, that was just before I took over as the head of the Office for Science and Technology, Science Set for Women unit. Amazing to think that that was 22 years ago. I have a massive passion about championing the roles for women in STEM. As far back as when I was a PhD student and later as working in industry and as president of the Women's Engineering Society. And when I was at the Royal Society as a diversity lead there, I ran a study and a conference looking at, it was called Race for Equality, and looked at the representation of different ethnic minority groups across the spectrum of STEM subjects. And so eventually, after my technical work of commercializing science and technology continued when I started setting up Katalytik, but eventually in about 2011, 2012, I kind of put that to one side and have been championing a change for culture and inclusion pretty much full-time ever since. So my mission and my passion is really about creating an engineering work and learning space where everybody can quite simply be their best, but not just being your best, but actually do the best engineering that you can do. Engineering that is going to help people across the world tackle poverty, climate change, and also levelling up of the opportunities for people, whoever they happen to be. And all of this really came together when a project I started back in 2011 with UCL, the Set to Lead project. And then it was after that completed that I realized I needed to do something. And it was working alongside John Mitchell and Emmanuel Attili as part of the architect team for the integrated engineering programme, where we weaved inclusion into the IEP, that I started really looking at what else we could do. And that really has just grown ever since, over 10 years. Amazing. So today I really want to give you a few more insights into where that growth has come from, and look at how we're taking it further, but also sharing it. And we've moved away from embedding. It sounds like a bit like sort of embedding an axe in someone's head. And that sometimes I think is what some people, particularly in engineering, feel like when we talk about diversity, equality and inclusion. It's like smacking people over the head. You will do this, you will do this. And I don't know about you, but I find that whatever we do, when someone tells me to do something, do I want to do it? Probably not. I'm just going to mute Helen. I can't mute Helen. So really the approach we're taking is around infusing inclusion. Think about putting small little bits of glass into the mix, and then really heating it up, sintering it, if you like, so that things shift and evolve. And ultimately we start locking a whole approach to inclusion into everything that we're doing. But it's down at the individual level, because that's the only space that we have the direct control over. It is what we do. So what are the fears and pitfalls in engineering? We've been working with engineering educators, and we've run team building workshops with industry, with corporate teams, but also across the undergraduate and postgraduate and postdoctoral sphere. And we want to get into the sort of bare facts of what inclusion is about. So I want to leave you today with some fresh perspectives and some insights into our thinking. How can you move the needle? And so it's about really that engaged, productive team. How can we help everybody give their discretional amount of effort into doing things? But back to Virginia Valiant, and it's kind of supported because she's written this new book. It's not new at all, is it? It's 2018, and it's about building an inclusive academy. So I don't know if anybody wants to take a screenshot so they can remember, or Helen, you can ping that into the chat. So Virginia Valiant, what a lovely story of irony. Most of you have probably come across unconscious bias, perhaps, and we tend to think of that in relation to Daniel Kahneman, who is the Nobel Prize winning economist and wrote that amazingly transformative book, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. An ironic twist, because that phrase that we attribute to Kahneman was actually came from Valiant and her Why So Slow book. She's the one who did that original work on CVs, renaming them, changing the gender of the owner of the CV, and then putting them back to assessment. And of course, that has been repeated so many times since, and it's almost presented as though it's something brand new. But it's not new. We are going round the loop several times, and it's things that we need to really understand. How can we stop going round the loop? How can we move forwards so that we're actually spiraling upwards and outwards and bringing more people into that understanding? So Valiant published the Inclusive Academy book, and it explores the academic ideals of excellence and the role that diversity has in the academy. And this is particularly appropriate for the work we do here at Katalytik, because at the very heart of the Katalytik manifesto for inclusive engineering, it's a kind of it's a map onto the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What is it that engineering needs? And at the very fundamental level, engineers want to do really good, solid, excellent engineering. But do we understand what that is? And one of the tools that we use with people is we use this, it doesn't really come out very well on the camera, but it's looking at exploring excellence in terms of engineering. And I think that's something that people don't always think about. How does the inclusion then map onto what we mean by excellence in engineering? And it's a really great way to spark people's thinking. And some of you may have been to the workshops that we have where we use these these discussion cards. get it the right way up, which explore different things around engineering and design and how we can make things better. And you'll know from other things that I've spoken about how the pregnant crash test dummy is something that we all need to understand. Why did we never think about having a pregnant crash test dummy when, of course, the data about the injuries caused by seatbelts to unborn fetuses was there for everybody to find out. So there's so many different ways we can think about how we can improve engineering. And excellence should be our fundamental yardstick, should it not? So we've created the manifesto, which is based around the sort of Maslow hierarchy of needs, and it looks like that. And if you put manifesto into the chat, Helen will make sure she sends you your own PDF copy of it. So we've been, as you know, pushing the needle on engineering. We've run 2 symposiums with UCL, Centre for Engineering Education, and we've worked with a good number of universities and companies. And designing the inclusive engineering education report was where we brought together all of that knowledge, and it's been really widely downloaded. But still, we hold our live lounge discussions every month, and we still hear there is much to be done, and many people to still be persuaded of the fact that inclusion, diversity, belonging, engagement is absolutely fundamental and relevant to engineering. You've probably got your own reasons about why you think the numbers in engineering haven't changed. Why have we still only got 15% of women on average in undergraduate courses? Why is there such a huge variation in Black, Asian, minority ethnic students in the different disciplines across the STEM disciplines, where we have a lot of Asian students in computing, electronics, and in some of the science disciplines like ophthalmology? Why is the comparable numbers of Indian students to white students in engineering, but so few Black British students? And why is there still such a big attainment gap for Black students in British education, higher education? And it's part of the whole equalities equation, isn't it? About what do we really mean by equality? What do we mean by parity? We may never get to parity for women. We may never get 50-50. But if we look at biomedical engineering, there is parity in there. But will we ever get there in mechanical engineering or electronics? And it may not, of course, be for the Black and Asian students that in the UK, it's very unlikely that we will get to a majority of British students. In some courses, I know there is a majority of non-white students. But the absolute fundamental point is it doesn't matter. If we do not get to equal representation of any underrepresented group on our courses, what are we doing to make sure that they all get the same opportunity, they all feel part of the community, and they can be all engaged to feel that they can be their best? And that is a fundamental problem as I see it. I'm not absolutely at all suggesting that we stop trying to fill the pipeline, that we don't keep trying to grow the diversity through our amazing outreach campaigns. Outreach campaigns have been really growing over the years. We absolutely must keep on doing that. But we need to understand how the rest of our student population can be inclusive to others. It's an absolute fundamental, is it not, of being a professional engineer to understand how we can grow and nurture people and bring them on. Equality and diversity is embedded within UK Spec and will be part of AHEP and the UK Spec 4.0, when it starts filtering through to everybody, is going to really underline how the whole sense of professionalism is moving forward to be inclusive of people, but understanding the issues of inequality across the world that is caused by on not considering sustainability or climate change, let alone the different needs of different groups of people. So practicing inclusion is absolutely core to being an engineer. So what are we doing? What are the strategies for that? Well, we could, of course, talk about inclusion in design, but I'm going to leave that for another day. And if you've got your own thoughts about things that we should be doing, please do add them into the chat. So one of the reasons that, of course, we have is in engineering is that the majority of engineers are white and male. And they don't necessarily see that things need changing because they look through their own eyes at the world and everything seems fine. They haven't experienced things, or people haven't repeatedly complained about things that are a problem because they perhaps don't feel that they can. They don't feel that the world is safe enough for them to make those comments. And they don't see, it's a growing number. There are many more male white allies around, which is fantastic. But if you look at the challenges that we experience, as you go through your experience for men and women, this is called the Adam and Eve effect, and it shows the kind of scissor plot of how things vary and the cumulative disadvantage. In this case, it's about sex, but it could equally be about ethnicity, when lots of small nudges and push. And when I described it to somebody from HEFKI when I was running the Women in Science unit, I said it's like someone's tapping you, and then one day you realize it hurts and there's a big bruise on your arm and you didn't notice that it was creating. I've heard other people calling it like somebody's just dropping a feather on you, one feather after another. And then all of a sudden you feel that you're buried under a ton of feathers. A ton of feathers is pretty heavy, isn't it? It's like having a ton of lead on your head. So things have changed recently. In 2020, we saw huge growth in the understanding of privilege from across the board, from men and women. But of course, for some people, I'm still getting engaged in discussions around understanding privilege beyond that of class. And even the discussions I have in my own family around what does privilege mean, and why is it important that we don't say Black Lives Matter too, and why that too on the end is really not the right thing to add. We've seen a lot happening through the impact of Athena Swan. We've seen universities, engineering departments, finally more gaining Athena Swan silver and finally Athena Swan gold. Fabulous to see. We're seeing undergraduates doing really well at UCL and Sheffield too, breaking the 20% barrier. Lassonde University in Toronto is committed by its major donor of reaching 50% of women. And it's really, really tough. There's no denying it. So having the broad strategies to attract, retain and advance, vitally important. There's loads of initiatives out there and networks, but a lot of them are still targeted at underrepresented people. And the burden falls onto these employee networks and resource groups, onto the groups of students that come from those disciplines. It isn't their responsibility to make a difference. It's our responsibility as individuals to do what we can to help people overcome the burden of being a minority, helping to shift the feathers. And so think about the burden that people have. Maybe one of your colleagues, you ask them, can you make this meeting? What happens when they don't respond straight away? What do you think? What do you feel? Do you think they're not committed? They don't really want to come? They're trying to think of a good excuse to get out of coming? Maybe it's because they think differently. Maybe they have to consider whether being on that particular committee is the right thing for them. Maybe they need to examine it from lots of different angles. Maybe behind the way they think, actually, it's more about who does it impact in their lives if they join this committee and they take on one more thing? What can they drop? Or what is the burden on the people they share responsibility for home and caring with? So they might then not go. What's the impact then of not going to that committee, not joining that networking group, not going for dinner with the senior visitor after a lecture? Do you remember those days? Maybe they can't stay and chat after the lecture. They have to rush back for childcare, whatever it may be. They're missing opportunities. It's another part of that widening of the graph. It's not just women. It's not just a minority ethnic individual. It could be equally one of your white male colleagues. But missing out on those opportunities is yet another way that a colleague can be personally diminished in the eyes of other people. The confidence has been compromised, the experience for connecting and communicating with people that are really senior, for example, might have just been missed. And that means that they may not then be noted or thought about when another opportunity pops up. Just things that we might then file in our head without even realizing, one of those biases that we sort of collect over time, that micro knockback or nudge. And so I I'm moving on a little bit further. So over lockdown, I know that people in academia have been immensely busy, really just trying to stay afloat. And so whilst we've been trying to stay afloat here in Katalytik, I've been writing a book, and it's around exploring how individual people can take responsibility for the things that they can do to make a difference. And it's about action. We know we've got rhetoric coming out of our ears of all the different things that we can do. So hopefully I'm going to get that. That's my mission, my target for getting that finished and published. And I hope you can come back and we can have a conversation in a few months' time where I can hold up a copy of my own book, not somebody else's. So today I really want to share with you our approach to infusing inclusion across the way that we all teach and we work, to give you some insights into the breadth and depths of things that you can do. And to do that in more detail, I can obviously only give you short insights today. At the end of April, we're holding a 4-day sprint class, which will be 1 hour fairly intensive exploration of some resources and frameworks that you can use to extend your conversations with your colleagues. 1 hour session over 4 days. Hopefully you can squeeze it into your calendars. And we want to provide opportunities to learn, but share the practice that we've been working on over the last year. And the sprint, of course, will come with some supporting materials, the framework and how to use them with a workbook. And of course, if you can't manage an hour every day for 4 days, we're going to record the session and we'll be able to share those around with you. So if you're interested in getting to know more about the sprint, then please just put sprint into the chat and we will send you some more information about it. Why did we create it? We created it to help people do a short dive into the conversation world around inclusion, so people can start building their individual personal growth plans, things that they could do, things that they could think about in particular instances, whether it's in a meeting, running a lecture, and things that they can do to help others shift their particular positions around inclusion. And so we will normally be charging £97 for it, but we're going to be offering it for the rest of the month, and particularly to those that have been here today for £47. So if you do want to find more about it, just put it into the chat. And if you're not interested in that, that's absolutely fine. We just want to explore other ways of helping and supporting you to make a difference. Because after all, we've been focusing on doing this for over 10 years now. And it's really helping to shift that culture change, culture transformation that people want to do to us all the time. And it just feels, I don't know about you, but those kinds of phrases make me feel like I'm doing it wrong. I need to really rethink what I'm doing and go through a complete reprogramming approach. But engineers, there's nothing wrong with engineers. They're doing a really great job. They're creating great solutions. They're innovative. They do understand and work and collaborate and communicate with people. But we want more different, diverse engineers. And the more diverse engineers that we encourage and keep in engineering, the more that we need to do to help people become better managers and leaders, to move away from that command and control approach. And no, it's really about helping people know that when they're going into work and people take away the exciting bits of their job and they start trudging up the stairs and they get concrete boots, they're feeling heavier and heavier and the days gets longer and longer. What are the things that if you notice your colleague looking and feeling like that, what can you do to help them? So one of the things you can do, look at the people that you work with, not for how they present and how you think they should behave or who they might be, but look at them and think and ask them, what do they need to be their best? What can they bring to the discussion? What's their knowledge and their history? And how can we connect and help people to understand? How can you help them be net creators of energy, or are they focused on getting things done? How do they tune into the different ways? We've been using the Clifton Strengths tool from Gallup to help people build engaged teams. And the thing about having an engaged team is that people become more able and capable of giving that discretional extra effort, not just doing a satisfactory job, but doing an excellent job. They become more productive and more profitable. But what's really interesting is that people who work with their strengths are actually say that they have 3 times more likely to have an excellent quality of life. And something in the post-corona world about that is so important. How can we help people improve their well-being by understanding what they want, what they bring, and what they need? How can we have conversations around inclusion that help them feel better? How can we have those conversations that make them feel that they are contributed, that they're valued, and importantly, that they are seen as a vital contributor? So what could you do to make a difference? So whether you're chairing meetings, and whether that means that you're running an online lecture or a tutorial or a study group, what are the things that you can do to draw people in? We all know that people from different cultures have different ways of showing up and being present. And some people in their culture, it's not the right thing to challenge or ask a question of a senior person or someone who's perceived to be more senior and a person of authority. So how can you be more creative about crowdsourcing what people think? Think about things like crowdsourcing questions, creating a problem or a scenario that enables people to contribute a map that's not attributed to any one individual about ideas of creating that solution. Ask people to create a short update, give reward people with points and acknowledgement. How many ways can you think to improve this? Because some people are naturally focus in on the gaps and problems and things. Really simple technique to start asking people to improve things. That works for the people who are laser sharp in always improving, and where something, a project, a report is never good enough. They just maximize it to the full, make it bigger, better, bring more people in. Other people always see the problems in things. They're always looking for the no, things don't work. They might be the apostrophe police in one aspect of their career or life, but they might also be the person that just sees that things aren't working. They will naturally want to help find solutions to make things better. How can you give visibility to people that are deep reflective thinkers, whose brains like to naturally, when posed with a question, can't come back and give you a quick answer, because they have to look at that question from absolutely 360-degree angles. They need to put extra factors into it and then reevaluate and pull that apart. How do you help those people contribute and participate? The ways that I found that works for them, and when I coach people with that quality, which in Clifton Strengths terms called intellection, means that I give them advance notice. I'll send them a short briefing note. I'll invite them to present an assessment of challenges that are posed in advance of a meeting. And then I ensure that they have a little platform at the meeting, maybe a 5-minute slot to pick out 3 things that need to be considered in refining a design or improving something, or even just opening a few questions to the other people in the meeting. So understanding that some people think fast and other people don't think slow because they're slow. They think slow because they are much deeper and broader thinkers. And bringing that combination of very quick, rapid thinking together with people who are more reflective and perhaps more respectful and don't want to offend, it gives them that opportunity and that platform. The other important thing, whether it's in a meeting of colleagues, about doing that and inviting people into a meeting to make a specific contribution, is it helps to showcase your confidence and trust in people. So if it's a departmental meeting and you want to give a platform to somebody to talk about something, or you want to show that somebody's been connecting and having conversations with other people, just put a couple of slots on every agenda. Okay, agendas are always packed, but make it a priority to do an inclusion and diversity related topic in the meeting. Bring people in to talk about who they've been talking and communicating with. Somebody from outside your department, your faculty, your institution, your sphere of excellence and professionalism. So maybe it's been about social science, not in engineering or technology. And give those people a platform. So if you're the chair of that event or that meeting, or the tutor or the supervisor, by doing that, you're demonstrating that you have trust and faith and confidence in their capability. and you're giving them an opportunity to showcase their talent and their capability. And if it's done every week, it stops people feeling that they're just being put on the spot. And another thing that you can then do is about acknowledging people's contributions, drawing them into a meeting summary or an update. And that works as well for people who aren't present. So if you feel that, or you notice that your committee, the finance committee, it might be the subject review committee, you've not managed to get enough people that give you some confidence that you've got a diversity of views there, bringing contributions and achievements for people who aren't present. Maybe somebody's got caring responsibilities, the meeting's been set at the wrong time. How can you give them a presence there? They could dial in, they could present a paper, you could actually talk up the things that they have been doing and how important it is to broadening the conversation. That works for academic industry, outside in your social community. It works in that sphere, but it also works in the student support community, whether it's a technical project or it's actually just delivering subject knowledge. It's broadening the content and the relevance to people in not just in the UK but globally, and it's giving that representation of views. So we want to help you take some of these ideas and many more back into your organisation, and to help you build not just an inclusive team that's doing the shaping and the delivery of curriculum or indeed research, but helping your students, whether they're the Gen Y, Gen Z, the millennials, or even the incoming Gen A, the alpha generation that's going to start coming into our universities. How can you make them feel valued, and how can you help them shape tomorrow's engineering workforce by being the managers and leaders of the future, people who can understand, respect, and be able to draw out the best of everybody that they work with? You know, there is scope and space still for initiatives and reports. I don't know how many trees have been slayed in the mission to build diversity, equity, and inclusion into science, engineering, and technology, but it is enormous even. But we need to understand how we can shift this to facilitate personal action and personal responsibility, because at the end of the day, that is the only person over who we have direct control. And it's understanding what we can individually do, both in terms of our own actions and questions that we ask, but also in how we can notice and interject and intercept things that maybe aren't going in the right direction. We can nudge in a positive and constructive way. We can tickle somebody with a feather rather than keep piling the feathers on top of their heads. So those are the kinds of things we want to help people do, is all really get an understanding of the many things that can be done. I read a report earlier this week, which was from Bloomberg, and it was around the American CEO Action Group, which has got over 2,000 chief executives from industry in America who have come together to address what they call in America diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they've got 600 things that businesses can do. We here have got like probably 250 starting point in terms of engineering alone. And so when you start adding them up, it's a huge number. But the important thing is that people start doing things. And so I hope that today I've managed to share with you a few ideas and a few thoughts of things that you can do. I had some other charts to do. One of the things that really struck me in engineering is that what's the problem and why can't we get our best people to get the job done? So it's around too many people being too busy doing things. But actually what we need to do is help people do the right things that will make a difference. It's not about doing DE&I to people. It's helping people be part of the whole DEI conversation. So that's what I wanted to really share with you today, some insights into this conversational approach, starting with excellence, moving on to belonging and inclusion, which ultimately in the manifesto terms takes you up to being innovative and creative. So let's help people be creative in the things that they can do. So if you've got any questions, ping them to Helen or put them in the chat. I've got a couple that somebody has already asked me, is when is the sprint starting? I probably missed mentioning that. So the sprint is for the last week in April, the 26th, and we'll be sorting out the time of day when that happens. And time commitments, it's really an hour a day, and then it'd be great if people took the worksheets along and did a little bit of reflection on them afterwards. So we're going to be working on what the best time of day is for people. I don't know if anybody has got any other questions. So there is a link to with a bit more information. There will be a workbook, and the opportunity will be looking at a different framework tool for having conversations. One of my passions is helping people understand in diversity space the difference between discussion, dialogue, and debate. I don't know about you, but for me, debate is one of those things, unless it's properly managed and people are already researching both of the polarities of the debate, that people are able to have more of a discussion and dialogue to understand the issues. But importantly, it's like noticing when people have actually shifted into debate mode, when you're actually trying to just have an open conversation with them. So I know that time is extremely precious to you today, and lunchtime is looming. So thank you so much for joining us. Do keep your eyes opening. We're going to don't keep your eyes opening. Do keep your eyes open. We're going to be adding more topics to our webinar program in the future. We will still be holding the live lounge. So it's the first Tuesday of every month at 12:30. So you can lunch and learn. You don't have to have your camera on. You can be munching on your salad at the same time. Helen's put the link into the chat. And we do also have some topic specific sessions. So it's not about teaching people in the lunch and learn. It's simply a facilitated conversation, a space to collect challenges and crowdsource solutions so that people can do it. And if you're not on the list for the live lounges, just again, add that into the chat or send a message to Helen and we'll make sure that you get the invite. So thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you at our next event. And thank you as well to Helen for managing all the tech side of things. Thanks a lot.